I see participants are still entering, so we'll keep an eye out for that. But we are recording this one, so if you are a bit late, don't worry, you can still review the recording and catch up with the few slides you perhaps have missed, but not to worry too much. We do a little bit of introductions first. So today we are going to cover two very important subjects. One of them is covering the Business Applications Summit 2020. Microsoft has hosted past week, so we will be jumping into that, all the news and announcements there, and we will be having a wave one update. That one will be fairly short, but just to cover a few highlights and especially important resources where you can find all the relevant information if you need to. So just to try to cover that, the webcast will be about 40 minutes with a few extra minutes for questions and answers. My request to everybody would be to mute your microphone if you would be. So nice. And if you have any questions, please first type them in the chat window. I'll keep an eye out for that to see if questions pop up. So you're free to ask anything you want. If I'm able to answer it, I will. If I see a subject where I know I will be addressing this in later slides, I will mention that too. So both will be covered there. So just as a household, just to repeat myself, household message, just try to keep your microphone muted to keep the sound quality as best as we can. Of course, in the questionnaire minutes at the end of the presentation, you're free to open the mic and jump in and ask questions verbally if the chat window doesn't work for you. So just a household message. So covering Business Applications Summit 2020 and the Release Phase 1 update. Let's just jump into the first, right? My name is Arjen Janssen. I'm connected to QBS Group as a Power Platform and Dynamics 365 specialist. In a different capacity, I am working with a few colleagues at Minds United. Minds United is, let's say, a sister company of QBS. Minds United is specialized in partner services and partner development services on the CRM and Power Platform area. So that's what my, let's say, day job is. And in my capacity connected to QBS Group, I'll be doing trainings, quite a few, all bootcamp style, all online, of course, since the current Corona crisis. And I'll be hosting these webcasts. We will be doing a few webcasts this year, about 6 of them. This is the first, and this webcast will be about these subjects. So if you have any suggestions of a topic to be covered in one of the upcoming webcasts, please mention them to Partner Care, for example, or your Partner Success Manager, and they make sure they relay that one to me. And if I'm able to, in the time permitted, I can try to get those subjects in there as well. So again, try to keep your Microsoft muted, please, and let's just continue. So the Applications Summit 2020 first, right? So Microsoft will host for a few years now the Business Applications Summit. It's always in the US and always somewhere in the Houston area or the Redwood area. And this was the first time they did a online only version. Of course, due to all the measures around the current crisis on the coronavirus, it's nothing more than logical. But still, this was an online only version, but still covering 2 days with an enormous amount of sessions. There were 278 sessions covering the myriad of products all around the business application platform. So Power Platform, Dynamics, Azure, Office 365, I think every product came to bear somewhere, but it was quite a few sessions. So I tried to follow them all, but in 2 days, that would have required me to copy myself. So that wouldn't be a very feasible option. So I did cover quite a few of those sessions, and especially also cover the 77 sessions who are still available on demand on the Business Application Summit site. So if you want to go there, the link is provided. Let me just show you how that looks. I have that one open still. So here we are. You can just open the site, click watch on demand sessions, and then you can make a selection of all sessions available. It's all recorded sessions. So very nice, very thoroughly prepared. And you can refine the results in here on session type, on topic, of course, and on products involved. And also there is a level subsection. See, the majority is on level 200, a few expert ones, advanced and expert, but quite a few on intermediate level. So for everybody, there is some relevance in here. So I would say if you find out of the highlights I'm covering in this session something of interest, just go there, follow the link, and watch the session you find of relevance yourself. Of course, you're free to do so. There's no costs involved. It's all available freely online. So just a bit on this year's focus. The strange thing is, something I just noticed was that a lot of subjects are covering the Power Platform products. So you're entering a business application summit. And over the years, Power Platform has becoming more and more of a dominant factor in there. Well, this time it certainly was. Majority of the sessions actually covered Power BI or Power Apps or Power Automate or Power Virtual Agents up to Common Data Service. So a lot of them is covered on the Power Platform. It's not surprising, of course, because the majority of the products involved somehow touch one of the Power Platform products anyway, or the other way around. One of the Power Platform products runs on the same platform, on the same technology as those business applications. So it's not really a surprise, but the scale tipped quite extensively as opposed to, maybe last year. Last year it was about 50-50, but the years before, I would say the Dynamics 365 products took the majority of the time. So the Power Platform has grown considerably. So that was just something which, kind of was noticeable. So I would say, perhaps we would be able to discover a pattern in here. So what is Microsoft actually doing? So also on that keynote presented on there, I would say the pattern is shifting and Microsoft is taking the holistic approach again, just as Microsoft always does. It's always a platform approach, and we as a partner are able to, get the elements we need out of that to provide the best solutions for our customers, of course. So if we go in this year's focus, my take on this was that Microsoft is having a really clear messaging, embrace the platform, and in that embracement, recognizing both the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 as the means to deliver a solution, which is complete and integrated, based on best of breed plus extra functionality or analysis services in Power Platform, focused on data first by adding intelligence with AI on all sorts of ways, and analyzable data on data with BI, and it's all enterprise grade. So it's compliant and secure from the ground up. So there's no element not covered in there. So it's a real mature solution in there. So this was, the second Business Application Summit where we get this messaging that Microsoft is considering the Power Platform as a serious business applications platform. And essentially, just to turn the world around, all Dynamics 365 products run on some sort of the same technology or integrate already heavily with the Power Platform technology. So you're able to do a lot more than just cover your own specialized branch of products, right? So let me just cover a few of the highlights. There's really too much subjects there to cover them all, but let me just, the things I found of most interest, let me just share them with you. Let's see how we get there. So first of all, a little bit of numbers on the Power Platform. So that growth, that's 700% growth in Power Apps, in production apps actually, that's really a staggering figure. That's just not double-digit growth. That's just 7 times as much Power Apps as we had a year ago. That's really huge. And that's from all branches and industries. So that's not an enterprise thing. It's across the entire industry that Power Apps is really stepping up. Well, the same as the active users. So it's not only a triple-fold active users, but it's also that those active users are actually using more Power Apps. That's the conclusion I have. And if you look at the details there, that, well, the bigger companies, almost every Fortune 500 company uses Power BI in some sort. There are more than 25 million data models hosted in a Power BI service, and there's more than 25 billion Power Automate steps run every day. That's just, those are mind-blowing, staggering figures. So that's just huge. So just to cover that one. So I think the Power Platform has just proven its worth quite a bit last year, right? So let's just cover the products one by one. Well, there's a few sessions on Power Platform, on Power BI, sorry, and those sessions cover a myriad of solutions. The takes I got from it was that, well, there's a few nice additions in adding new authentication patterns and enabling users to embed Power BI much more integrated, much more tightly into existing products, from the range of Dynamics 365 up into Power Apps products, which is, I think it's huge to be able to embed Power BI wherever you need it and to just send along the correct parameters. That's just huge. And there was a lot of unsupported embedding features already available, but this just, well, enables you to do a lot more. So you're able to use the same authentication patterns you're already using in Power Apps to embed Power BI. Of course, there's license restrictions, so you need the proper license to do the embedding, but still, if you're a Power BI user, well, this is just huge. Another big thing was direct query access availability on Common Data Service for Power BI. So it's not what we did in the past. We did, you work with Power Query Designer, you're building your data set, and then you're just retrieving all the data from Common Data Service. Let's say, take kind of a snapshot of the data, you build your Power BI dashboards on that, on reports, and that's that. This is just using Common Data Service as the database directly. So that direct query access, that one is really huge. You don't need to work with exports of the data anymore, or downloads of the data. You can just work with the data directly from Common Data Service. So that one is also very huge. There was also a lot covered in the vision and roadmap. Too much for me to, well, do in one slide. So I took the liberty of having the Power BI vision and roadmap linked to that session. As you see in that screenshot I took, there's a lot of innovation coming up in the upcoming months anyway. So a very nice thing to look. So that session where I'm linking to in here, that session is a particularly interesting session to see where Power BI is going. So on Power BI, also a lot of news on Power Apps. Well, the biggest thing I still have to date is that now we have the mobile player for Power Apps enabled for all app types. The nice thing is that even your Dynamics 365 apps, you can deploy into the Power Apps player your own Power Apps, of course. And if it's a model driven or a Canvas app, it really doesn't matter anymore. They can just be run from that mobile player altogether. It really looks stunning. And to be honest, I actually prefer this player now. I prefer this one as opposed to the original Dynamics 365 mobile app, because this one is just better. It's good menu options, good scalability. The responsiveness works, so solid material in here. So now you can just work with not only your Canvas apps in the mobile player, but also your model-driven app. So that's huge. The second thing which was new is that you now can have custom pages and converging Canvas and model-driven apps in a much more easier way. You could already do a kind of a hybrid option by including web resources, which actually is a link to the Canvas part, right? But now you can just build your own combinations of Canvas and model-driven forms with the new model-driven app builder, and that one is coming up. So we still have to wait for that. It's in preview still, but if that one comes out, it's just much more easy to build your own Canvas and model-driven apps and combinations of those. So powerful stuff, to be honest. So now you can do embedding of pixel perfect pieces into your model-driven app and having it look as if it's one seamless experience, which is, I would say, awesome. The second one is what I took from it is, and I just can't cover everything, of course, but the second one I would say would be the simplification we got on configuring portal and identity providers. You already had your ways of doing identity providers, adding identity providers through Azure ID. So you had those options already, but now it's much more simplified. You don't need to be a developer or an Azure specialist to do it anymore. Now you can just work with portal identity providers in a new management experience. So in the Make.Power Apps Studio environment, you can just configure your own portal identity provider. So if you would want somebody to be able to log into the portal using a Facebook identity or a Google identity or whatever identity, as long as they're supported, you can without any special specific Azure AD or Azure knowledge. So perfect. And the last topic I saw on Power Apps was embedding Power Apps Studio in Teams, which is, I think, still super enthusiastic about that. You can already embed Power Apps in Teams, which is, well, awesome in itself. But now you can just build them in your Teams experience as well. So, okay, you still have to be a bit knowledgeable with building Canvas apps, for example, but you can build them without leaving Teams. So especially for building a simple app or just deploying an app, that's just a breeze now. Just do that in Teams and you can share it with, well, whatever people you're collaborating with. So a much more easy way of doing it. So as you can see, a model-driven app and a Canvas app, they can just both coexist within the same Power Apps player. So Power Automate, also a lot of news in there. For example, you can share flows as templates now throughout your organization. What we did before, well, you would be asking, well, this is logical, right? Didn't we do this before? Well, actually, you didn't. What you did is you exported the flow and you enabled another user to import it. And there you go, that other user can use a flow. Now you can just share flows as templates, and especially user-oriented flows, like let's say if you want to have an extra signaling there or a weather forecast emailed or an approval flow extra or whatever, you can now share that with your user base and well, you kind of have an organization gallery with that. Second big thing is now you can run child flows within flows. That's actually a big thing. One of the reasons why I'm still working in Dynamics 365 customer engagement with workflows is because I can run child workflows. Now I can just move over into Power Automate and run flows within flows. And that's actually the thing I was just missing. So I'm actually particularly happy with that, but this is just a big thing anyway. You can attach files to approval flows. Well, for the people who already work with Flow, now you can just use approval flows to send out approval messaging, right? So you want to, for example, have an approval for a document coming in. It could be an invoice from a supplier or whatever. Well, the strange thing is you could only send content in data, and you could send a link, for example, but it would be so much better if you could attach the files where the approval was concerning about, also within those same flows of Power Automate. Well, now you can. So you can attach files to approval flows. So next big thing, big hurdle, I would say, overcame. The other thing is, if you want to test flows, one thing which is particularly cumbersome is if you have a branch ending in an email being sent, well, you would want to test that branch in your flow designer without sending those emails. For example, if they will end up being, well, misfired emails, for example, or you just want to prevent the flow send the email, but you still want to test that branch within flow, right? Now you can do it. Just put a single action in there with a static result, and you can just still test the entire branch, and it will act as if it has sent that email, but that's not the entire test you would be doing. You would be testing if that branch is actually working. So much better. One of the things I'm particularly not pleased with, for some time, is the cumbersome way of managing expressions. So if I want to have a little bit of more complex expression in there, it requires me to just copy and paste it or just run through it with my cursor. It's just a bit cumbersome. Now you have a multi-line expression editor, much more easy to work with. So, well, top of the class experience there. And together with that comes also a dynamic content editor, also a very useful feature in there. And the last thing is, if you want to add AI builder actions into your flows, which you can also use a new connector for that now. So you can also do AI builder actions in your Power Automate flows. Very powerful behavior in there. So few new things on the common data service. So let's say this is the database where the entire Dynamics 365 world eventually will run on. So not all products do this at the moment, but well, at the end, well, it will be ending up in there. So a few new improvements on the common data service. First of all, there's much more improved compliance framework in here, where you can manage enhanced data loss prevention and connected control. So you make sure that data is not accidentally deleted and not recoverable. So that's really a thing which helps in compliance. The other thing is, it also adds a new audit experience, also important for compliance reasons. For example, you can have a set TTL per record type. So you can now say, I want a time to live of, for example, if you're due to regulations required to remove data after a certain set of years, let's say 7 years, you can now set that one automatically, and it will automatically remove that piece of data after that set time to live. So you're actually being absolutely compliant with that. And it's also, you can prove that you're compliant. The other thing is you can configure this per entity, so a lot more compliancy comes with the common data service already. The other big thing I would say is you can use CDS as a TSQL, a Transact SQL endpoint, and this is for database guys a real big thing. Transact SQL just enables you to create your queries in a little bit more complex manner, as opposed to what you could do already on CDS. So this is, I would say, just a missing link there, and it actually works with SQL Server Management Studio up until a certain point. Of course, it's still CDS; it's not the actual database you're accessing, but you can use now TSQL queries to do queries on CDS, which will add to stability, but also enables you to do a little bit more complex queries as you're used to. So especially if you want to follow a longer thread of relationship between entities, this is really helpful. And again, CDS direct query for Power BI, that enablement is a big thing in itself. Actually, Charles Lamanna did a demo in one of those sessions. The demo actually failed, but still you can see the power in there, of course. There's also a lot of improvements on the site. One of them is file attribute improvements. So you're actually still, you already have the availability to add files as fields in Common Data Service in Dynamics 365 apps or in model-driven apps, of course. So you could already add files as a field, which is, well, I would say, an improvement in itself, but now it's improved as well. So the maximum storage area is improved, so maximum file size, and a thing which is not enabled yet, but it's in preview. You can search through those files with Azure Search in the near future, and that actually is just a missing feature already. You could already save your files, not as attachments, but as separate storage in your Common Data Service storage. It uses file storage, which is already a separate container for that. But now you can just search through those files and the content of those files as well. And that's a big thing, I would say, because in most cases, when you implement a model-driven or a Dynamics 365 app, if you want to do file storage, you usually will kind of have to revert to, well, connecting, for example, SharePoint, which is not an issue, of course, but it's just two systems you have to manage, right? If you could just store your files in the file storage of Common Data Service, you can manage everything from the app designer and from that side of the application. So I would say this is just a big bonus. So a lot of new subjects covered in there. Another big thing is that Dynamics 365 operations apps, so let's say Dynamics 365 Finance, Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management, those applications actually run on CDS. It's almost as if they run on CDS. They still use their own database, but they have an online link with CDS. So you can now access those applications real time, read and write through CDS with all the other Power Platform products. So AI Builder, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, Power Virtual Agents, if you want to. They can all access the data which sits into Dynamics 365 operations applications, so finance or supply chain management, etc. You can now access all that data through CDS, which is, I would say, a big thing, because otherwise it just would require you to have a link between systems. Now you can just access the data directly, and this is just extremely powerful. And it also gives a bit of an insight what Microsoft's vision is on those business applications which are not on CDS yet. So the next big hurdle will be that Microsoft will be doing exactly the same. They didn't announce it yet, but well, you can see it in their vision that they will be doing this for Business Central as well in the future. So, and I think we really need that. So that will be a big thing as well. So a few new things on Dynamics 365 for sales. Well, first of all, there's a new sales accelerator capability available in Dynamics 365 for sales. Essentially provides you with a stream, and you can manage multiple streams of data coming in, and you can just manage them and get suggestions on actions to take, etc. There's also a new Assistant Studio. Will actually gets you into more AI guided engagements. So that new Assistant Studio will be coming out very soon. And the big thing, I would say, everybody who is doing Dynamics 365 for sales should be trying is the new sales forecasting capabilities. This new sales forecasting model actually helps you to do a lot more from the ground up, as opposed to that we did already with goals, right? That was the, well, let's say the forecasting method we had before, which was actually a very linear approach. You can only see what was outstanding and what was already closed, but now we can forecast into much more detail. So first of all, you can have forecasting also in automatic trend visualization. So that's a thing. You can have predictive forecasting. Of course, you need to do a buildup of data before you get there, but still. But the other thing is it actually learns from you working with this. You can build your own forecasting models using your own data entry points, and those forecasting models can be configured within the application. So, well, if you've not done this already, I would suggest please try that one out. It's really awesome functionality. It's not too difficult to learn, and it gives you a lot more insight in how your sales is working. So a tip from my side. Also some news on Dynamics 365 project operations. So we have this project service automation product in Dynamics 365, which was kind of a standalone silo product. And Microsoft kind of had a bit of struggle with that product. It's a great product, to be honest. So nothing negative about it, but it was kind of siloed, right? And good project service automation actually requires you to do ERP together with the project service functionality. And well, that is now built by Microsoft. So that presentation around project operation is, well, I would say, very powerful. You can see the integration between project service automation, Dynamics 365 Finance, and you can still use Microsoft Project with it. And this three branched total product actually works seamlessly together now. And that's actually quite new. This was something Microsoft was redesigning in the project service automation product. So when you open it, it still will look the same, but there's a lot more going on beneath the hood, and it's now able to do a lot more with Dynamics 365 Finance. So I can also see this as a prelude to having a project operations SKU coming up. So where you would have a combined features between finance, project service automation, and project as well. So a lot more going on there. It was nice, particularly nice to see. So if you have an interest in project service automation, well, please have a look at the project operations presentations on the website there. So, but there's also a lot more on, for example, Power Virtual Agents, commerce, field service, customer service, and remote assist, especially on field service and customer service. Well, that's mainly all with IoT, of course, the connected IoT features, but there's, well, quite a few new things to be shown there, but, well, just the time doesn't permit me to do a lot more there, but, well, those sessions are available for everybody on the Business Application Summit site anyway, so just go ahead and have a look. So I have about 12 minutes left in this presentation. So let me see if I can cover a few more subjects. One of them, well, the last one actually, but let's see how much time I have left. Let's just cover the release wave 1. What I want to do here, I do not want to cover every bit of functionality which is announced in the release wave or general available since the release wave has been done in April. But I want to provide you with a few highlights, the important announcements they made, and the resources where you can find what information around the release wave. So just to guide you through all this a little bit more. So let's just first jump into the release wave 1. Well, what every release wave does is it's a biannual event, and it's covering both Power Platform as Dynamics 365. I'm just confined now to Dynamics 365, but the Power Platform is just handled in this exactly same fashion. Release wave 1 every year covers the released new features between April and September. They announce all the new features in January of this year already, so you could already be informed of what is coming. What Microsoft does, it's kind of an agile process, so not every bit of functionality they announce in January actually is being released in April. Sometimes they're not satisfied with the quality in testing or preview functionality, and they just postpone it half a year for some for obvious reasons, but otherwise it's kind of a good insight in what is going to come in April. Same goes now for the next wave, which is release wave 2, and that always happens in October of the year. So the fall and the spring wave, that's also different naming. A few announcements Microsoft made around the release plan effects due to the coronavirus outbreak. Well, the links in there, essentially Microsoft says, well, all new features just stay on plan. There's no reason to just defer them, but the mandatory uptake is deferred to the end of this month. So you don't have to push everything into wave 1 immediately. So that's a big thing. And the other thing is, there's also an update on team member license enforcement. That's actually a grace period which is extended. We will cover the team member license enforcement a little bit more in this session, extended to January 31st next year. So that's actually adding more than half a year into this. So a few big announcements in there. So if you go into the release plan itself, let me just cover that one. That's also something I had open. You can find all this if you follow the link in the presentation, and you see it's all summarized per product. So it's all in here, and what you see in here is covering marketing, sales, sales insights and product visualize, customer service, service insights, field service, and remote assist, etc., etc. So all products kind of come into play in here. And if you want to know more, for example, around Dynamics 365 marketing, you can just open it. And there's also a link, what's new and planned. And this one is the most important. So for every product, there's a page like this. And if you go into this page, you see what's general available. So that's available if you update into wave 1. So if when you update your product to wave 1, you have all this functionality starting at that date. Everything which is checked green is available. Everything which is still to come will be having a date where you can expect that feature to be available. You can also see when certain features are in early access. So this one will be in the summer be updated into the, let's say, wave 2 cadence. Then you can see everything which is in early access for the upcoming October release. And the last one is you also have a public preview we have available as well. So let me see. Okay, and what you see in here, these are the functionalities they are talking about. So if you want to know more, just open one of the links and you see what functionality is being announced. So a few highlights I have to mention. So first of all, let me do that by product. Let me start with marketing. I'm just taking marketing, sales, and customer service, just to give a few examples. Quite a few new features available. In customer journey, you have the automated scheduler, you have spam checker, test send improvements for sending out emails. If you want to know how they, you want to test your email campaign, compliance checker, segmentation management, and a few more improvements in here. What's new and planned? You see this link directly goes into that page with the what's new and planned features. So if you want to know more, you can go in there. A few things I want to highlight. First of them is the automated scheduler. In your customer journey builder, you now have the option to do smart scheduling. If you want to send out an email, the smart scheduling feature actually decides on the best moment to send that email to the specified recipient. So they will, for example, be receiving that email within office hours, for example. So that's something really helpful. It's a bit similar to the email engagement features you have in customer engagement for sales. In customer engagement for sales, you have, let's say, you have a little bit of a customer engagement advises you on the best moment to send out an email. Well, this is similar functionality. It uses the same framework, but now does it automatically in your customer journey. So that's, I would say, a very helpful feature. The other thing is, well, actually the question you would be having with the spam checker is, why wasn't this in the product before? Well, you're right. This should have been in there for a long time. Every marketing platform has a spam checker feature or a compliance checker feature available. So this should have been in there for a little bit longer, but I'm happy it's in there now. So let's see how that takes on the current email campaigns. So a little bit more on Dynamics 365 for sales. I will just be covering a few highlights, but there's a lot new functionality. I would say the most important ones will be the team member license enforcement, because that actually is a limiting factor for new deployments, because the other ones have a grace period extended into end of January next year, but still that's an important thing to consider and to engage your customer with if you have issues with team member functionality. Customizable forecast models already cover that subject, and also the forecast accuracy, the precision pipeline management. It's also easier to work with email templates. You have a new activities experience in the timeline frame. And finally, you can now save your PDFs you have rendered based on a Word document, for example, in Dynamics, automatically save them to SharePoint, which is, I would say, awesome feature as well. It's all nice to have, of course, but still, these are new features. So team member license enforcement, to talk a little bit more about that, just beware that new tenants, so new customers, will be having this issue. You have now an enforcement in place that team member licenses only are allowed to work with the team, the provided team member application. You can still customize that team member application within license boundaries, but you have to make sure that it works. So how does the enforcement work? Essentially, for everybody who has started a new tenant or has started a tenant before April 1st this year, they are still off the hook. They have been granted the grace period until end of January next year. So everybody between October 2018 and April 1st this year, they are can still work with team members as they are working now, but all new tenants will be having a team member app, which is the sales team member app, where team members have only access to this one. If you have a team member license, you can still customize the app, but note within team member license restrictions. So you still have the security in place. For example, on restricted entities, you only have read-only access, for example. So forecast models, already talked quite extensively. I can't hide my enthusiasm about this feature. It's still far from ideal, but it works much better than goals. So there's a win already in here. And precision pipeline management. This is just part of the same framework, and I can now move opportunities from phase to phase in a Kanban dashboard, which is, well, I would say awesome. So on Dynamics 365 customer service, also a lot of news. Most of them are cosmetic improvements. So I would say nice that we have a better timeline improvement, that we have a better knowledge-based search. So that's all, to be expected to improve, of course, but I would say majority of improvements are around the native support for connected customer service on IoT, and of course also the team member license enforcement. Again, it also applies for customer service implementations, but the next big thing will be around that you have native IoT support. If you're using IoT Central on Azure, you have the correct IoT integration with your hardware devices, for example. There's a few example studies in there. You can just rebuild them. It's not too difficult to do. And now you can just work with those IoT alerts from devices registered to the customer and convert them automatically into cases, for example, in customer service. So very nice feature, but it's now available and integratable out of the box. And that's, I think, it's a big thing. Well, again, customer service team member app, same as the sales app. There's also one for team members, of course. So that brings me to the end. I promised you 5 minutes of questionnaire time. But well, we have 1 minute left. I'm happy to stay on a little bit longer if there's any questions, of course. So, but if you are stressed for time, well, of course you're allowed to leave. But if you have any questions, please be free to ask them. One thing I got a request on to just to remind you on, there is a commercial offering available, which is, I think, of particular interest for Business Central partners. I would say just have a look at it. If you have Business Central implementations, Business Central enterprise licenses, you're allowed to add a sales enterprise or customer service enterprise attached license to that one for the attached pricing. But it's only allowed available for the users who have that Business Central enterprise license. Still, I think it's a very relevant offering. So I just wouldn't want to keep that from you. So if you have any interest in this and you want to order it, just run this by your PSM if you're not sure how to do it, or just run it through Partner Care. QBS will be happy to help you with that. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. You can also open the microphone if you want to do it verbally. I'm happy to take any of your calls, of course. I'm not seeing any yet. Could be that I'm missing something, but otherwise I would say there's no questions up until now. All right. Well, I'll keep the session open for a few minutes. So still, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask. And otherwise, I would say thanks for joining. And happy to see you on one of the next webinars that will be announced on the QBS website when you registered for this one as well. So happy to see you there again, covering next interesting subjects.